Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog, Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in pints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my formulaic friend Frank. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well in Act 1. By Act 2, things are looking really hard. And by Act 3, I'm facing the fight of a lifetime. But you know what? It's all okay, because in the end, good will prevail, I guess.
If you have a question mark on it, then I'm not sure if you...
It's just that I just question, how formulas work. But
Yeah, right, of course.
Yeah.
I understand.
But that's it. That's all it is.
Okay, I understand. All right, well, here's the dealio, Frank. I need to know what you're drinking.
Well, sir, I am drinking a Lord Hobo Brewing Company Boom Sauce IPA.
Cool. What does that taste like? How hoppy is
Sauce, boom sauce. I don't know why. Well, it's actually pretty hoppy. It's one of my favorites in terms of IPAs. It's a tried and true classic up here in the Northeast. You find it in a lot of spots, and I rather enjoy it. I've been to their brewery. It's a lot of fun, and it's a hop forward IPA. It's a kind of a quintessential IPA. It's sort of what you would expect when you think of an IPA. It's very, very hoppy, but I enjoy it quite a bit.
Oh, that's so interesting. I like things like that. All right, so my friend, I am drinking a New Hampshire American Ale, an NH American Ale, if you will. It is quite refreshing from the 603 Brewery.
Mm-hmm.
Live free, drink 603. This is really good. I've never had this before. It's a delightful red can.
It is. I had some earlier today. It was pretty good. We're having a guys' weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We're hanging out with some buddies of ours.
It's called a writing retreat, Frank. Also known as a caucus.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can call it that.
Caucus. Right?
Right.
Well, Frank.
Writing retreat.
Well, Frank, we're here on this writing retreat because recently, not recently, but it's pretty well known that Kevin Feige, head of Marvel Entertainment, or at least Marvel Films, Marvel Studios, he, before the start of each new movie, he has his team watch Superman the movie by Richard Donner from 1978.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I know my movies. Oh, yeah.
You're on it.
Because they see, Kevin Feige sees that as the quintessential superhero film, and to him, you can't really get better than that. And so what Marvel has done is they really have taken that formula, right? And they've run with it. And so you can jump in here at any time, but if you watch, say,
right now, I'm jumping in right now.
Ow, it hurts my ear when you jump in so loud like that. So let's say Captain America: The First Avenger.
Sure.
Is boy from home,
mm-hmm.
wants to do something, not sure what, ends up with a chance to do something. Middle act is the heroics of the superhero, and then the fight for their life at the end.
Right.
And so this is the classic origin story.
Yes.
It's just the hero's journey.
Yes, it is.
There's really nothing, I would say there's nothing special about it.
That would be maybe a little too far, but I understand what you're saying. It's sort of a templatized version of the hero's journey.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes there's a lot of things that make Superman the movie special, but I think what makes Superman the movie different is you've got the first act is the sort of where they came from. The second act then is very quickly pivots to like he's in Metropolis. He's like the jokes are flying. It went from Shakespearean Krypton to young Clark in Kansas on the farm. Very quickly then to he's in Metropolis. He's in the big city. He's in his element. Like this is the sort of in Act 2 he is like in the quintessential, like he is now the full-on version of himself.
That is correct.
Right? So it kind of quickly goes there, and there's a tonal shift from down-home farm to in the city, things are fast-paced, the jokes are flying, that kind of thing. And then Act 3 is when he goes up against the big villain and has his first, victory against the big villain. So that's like the template for a superhero origin story.
Mm.
And even so, Feige has his teams do it, I think, for every film, even
Every
if it's
film. I mean, even if it's not applicable, because
even if it's not an origin story,
because it's not just the tone. I think it's not just the formula that he's taking, but it's also the tone. And whereas Superman the movie is unapologetic, like we're here to have fun, everyone, but there are still going to be stakes.
Yep.
And you are still there's going to be some, I guess, resonance, I guess, at the end, because, spoilers for a movie that is 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, Pa Kent has a heart attack. I know. And dies, and that's kind of right, and that's what sends Clark on his kind of initial hero's journey.
That's the push.
And
that's Luke losing Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Exactly. Just a year earlier.
Yep.
Just a year earlier. Yep. So, but the tone is very earnestly tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, that's a good earnestly tongue-in-cheek. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's the only I think that's the only way I could think to describe that film, because it takes itself seriously, but it also doesn't take itself seriously.
Yeah. Seriously, but not too seriously.
That's right. And if you really look at almost any Marvel film, it takes itself seriously, but doesn't take itself seriously. And of course, there are different versions of that. Like, say, Thor Ragnarok doesn't take itself seriously more often than not. Mm-hmm. Guardians is another good example.
Yeah.
It doesn't take itself too seriously. But then there are other movies like, say, Infinity War or Winter Soldier or Civil War, all the Captain America movies besides the first one. They take themselves more earnestly than tongue-in-cheek, but both those elements are still there. And then you have movies that play it right down the middle. Maybe the first Iron Man, the first and second Iron Man films, the first Captain America, actually all of Phase 1, really.
The first Spider-Man film.
That's a good...
That's also kind of earnestly tongue-in-cheek, to be honest. Like it's got a little bit of a balance between the two, because you do have it is earnest in that when Uncle Ben dies, like that's a really serious moment, and like
but he doesn't die in Homecoming. There is no.
No, I'm not talking about Homecoming. I'm talking about the original Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
You can understand why I was confused.
Yes, you can. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
That's earnestly tongue-in-cheek.
That's earnestly tongue-in-cheek. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
But I think that's also maybe why that film is also rewatchable in a lot of ways. Because
it follows the same template as Superman the movie.
Very
closely.
Because the template is basic in its own sense. You can certainly dive into it if you want to, but because it's a formula, you can recognize the formula even if you're not thinking about it, and it feels comfortable to the viewers. And so anyway, so this all kind of stemmed from Kevin Feige recently said that he suggests that the DC universe follow that same template.
What a novel idea. That DC follows a DC template.
Well, people, ardent defenders of the DCEU were a little bit slightly up in arms because they said, well, it's an old formula. It doesn't work anymore. Like, DC's trying something new and fresh, and even if there's some steps that are mistaken along the way, at least they're doing something that's different as opposed to making what some people see as essentially the same movie every time if you're following that formula, which is, I don't think, true.
I think it's an unfair characterization, but I can understand why you would feel that way.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is for us. So even we've seen it a bunch of times before, we're going to see it again. But the question is really, should we see it again, or is it actually time to maybe you can keep the earnest tongue in cheek, but is it time to retire the basic hero's journey? I guess.
Are you asking me that question?
I'm asking you that question.
I think after like 5,000 years of that formula, like why? Like why are we so special now that we don't need that? Like, oh, we've evolved past that suddenly in the last 50 years or something. You know, like
you're right.
That's like kind of a silly notion. Like it's a tried and true format. It's one of the, you know, that concept, that notion that like every story is the same story, or there's only like 4 stories or whatever. I forget what the number is, but
technically, if there are a couple of different versions of that. The one that I know is that there's only one story, and it's the question of who am I?
Yep.
And whether you answer that question or not in the story, that's the one story.
I've heard it said there's only one story. I've also heard that 8.
I've also heard it said that many people come into our lives
for a reason,
bringing something we must learn before we part,
if we let them.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I've heard, you know, there's one story, and I think the other number is like there's 8 different stories. People have broke it down to like there are 8 different templates of every story, and every story you've ever heard follows one of those 8 templates, whether you realize it or not. So whether you subscribe to the 1 or the 8 theory, the classic hero's journey, Star Wars, Superman the movie, Captain America: The First Avenger, that template works for a reason. Like there is a real reason why that resonates with people. So to say like, well, I think it's time to retire that is like, okay, great. You come up with something better then, buddy.
That's a good point.
You know, whoever is suggesting that, I'm a little bit like, I would love to see you try. Because people have tried for thousands of years, and everything they do falls into one of the classic templates.
That's right.
So what you got? What you got? Because I tend to believe that there are only a handful of templates that every story falls into, whether we realize it or not. And so trying to say, oh, that's old hat, that's tired, here's something completely new. Something completely new is great, but usually it falls into one of the templates that we know. And it might be a new twist on a template, or it might be a blending of 2 different templates or whatever. But I really do believe there's only a handful of stories to be told. And they can be told in new and fresh, interesting ways. And I love it. But to say, here's something no one's ever done before, is there's a little bit of hubris there. And it's really hard. It's harder to do than anyone gives credit for.
Do you think that I just lost my question. Oh, okay. Do you think that, so let's say we keep that formula, because I think you're absolutely right. It's who are you to say that what we've done for thousands of years, literally thousands of years of storytelling, is no good anymore?
Going back to like Homer or before.
Right, exactly. Epic of Gilgamesh and like all this different stuff. Like, it's the same story. We're telling the same stories, different setting, different characters, but they learn the same lessons and blah, blah, blah. And if you're bored of that, then maybe you need to get out of the genre and not necessarily get out of the formula. You know what I mean? Because most films, Disney films, WB films, Paramount films, indie films, it doesn't matter. They're all saying basically the same thing. Whether your main character is being chased by aliens alone on a spaceship, or they're discovering how to live life after their mother passed away, it's the same story. Mm-hmm. They're figuring out who they are.
You can have different lessons at the end of a similar story. The end of the story can be, you can do anything if you set your mind to it. The end of the story can be, love conquers all. It can be whatever, but you can follow the same template to get to a different lesson.
That's correct. That's a good way of putting it. Now, on that note, are then fans saying it's not the formula, though? I think comic book fans particularly like, yes, we know the origin of Booster Gold, you don't need to tell us. Whereas the millions of other people that don't are like, excuse
Who's
me,
this?
Who is that guy? So yeah, you have to say it, because like you always hear more. You hear more about Batman than anybody else, like, or Spider-Man. You hear a lot of like, we know how this comes to about. Well, your first, like your third or fourth time watching this character might be somebody's first.
Yes.
So, too bad.
Be careful of gatekeeping, right? Be careful of like saying, "Well, we know this already. Like we fans already know it, so don't tell it again for the people who are not fans." Like,
Right.
let non-fans in. Let new people in.
At one point, you weren't a fan.
Right.
And you had to learn it.
Right. Yes, maybe you were 5. Maybe this person is 25 when they're learning it for the first time. But so what? Let them in.
That's right.
Let them in on it.
That's right. So, do you think that they're saying it's not the formula, but do you think it's the tongue-in-cheek earnestness? Do you think that style has gone by the wayside?
I think that has been. So I think DC has put that by the wayside. I think Marvel has embraced it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There is a tongue-in-cheek earnestness to just about every Marvel film, and there's a difference in the balance between tongue-in-cheek and earnest. Right?
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy is much more tongue-in-cheek. Captain America: The First Avenger is much more earnest, and the other films I think sort of fall on a spectrum between the two. If you have earnest and tongue-in-cheek on either end of a spectrum, most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe falls into a spectrum between the two, and it's sort of a percentage of like 70-30 or whatever. But DC has kind of gone a different direction.
I think it depends on the film. I think Wonder Woman is
an
a
exception.
perfect example.
It's a
perfect example of following the 1978 Superman the movie formula.
Yes, it is
for its tone and for its setup.
Yep, agreed.
Because if you watch that film, it's kind of Captain America, a lot Captain America: The First Avenger, which is a lot Superman the movie.
Yes,
it's all the same. It's all wrapped up together.
And it's honestly why I think it works.
And I think it's why it resonated with audiences. Now, but here's the thing. Audiences' tastes change, right? And so...
Do they, though?
I think so, yes. I think they do. I think culture shifts and different generations are looking for different things.
I agree with that. I agree with that on a surface level. But I think on a more fundamental level, there's a reason why Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope has resonated for 40 years. There's a reason why Superman the movie inspires people for 40 years. Because tastes change, but there are certain constants that always work.
I agree. And there are actually, that was going to be my point, because I don't think that the tone is tired. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Okay.
I think that earnest and tongue-in-cheek is actually the one tone that really survives time, because nobody really takes themselves too seriously, or shouldn't take themselves too seriously, and that if you reflect that in your entertainment, then it has a rewatchable value, which means that it lasts forever.
Yeah.
Movies that are not inherently rewatchable tend to be forgotten.
Yes.
Because they're just a little too heavy, and then people go, "Oh no, good movie, great movie," but I honestly, I'm not in the mood for that. But let's watch Back to the Future, because that's tongue-in-cheek earnest.
Yep, that's right.
And it lasts forever.
You and I just last night were talking about like Dark Knight Rises, and what a great movie that is. Even Dark Knight, 2008 Dark Knight, great movie. I have to be in a very specific mood to rewatch really any of those Nolan Batman films.
Agreed.
Right? They're phenomenal films. Like, they are really well made films, especially The Dark Knight. But you need to be in a specific mood to watch it. For me, I need to be in a mood where like watching this movie won't get me down too much.
That's a good point.
Right? But I can watch Superman the movie. I might not always be in the mood to watch it, but like, I never worry about getting depressed from watching it. I never worry about like, oh, I'm not in the right state of mind for this. I need to like be a little happy so that even this has me down a little bit. It's not. I don't have to worry about that. It's an uplifting film. First Avenger is the same thing. Like, it's an uplifting, the hero wins at the end film. Star Wars as well. So I feel like,
well, that's a tricky line, because the hero winning at the end does not always mean it's an uplifting film.
Okay. That's a fair distinction, because if you look at If you look at like BVS, Batman vs Superman, the heroes win in the end, but is it an uplifting film? No, because Superman dies.
I was actually even thinking before that. I was thinking Man of Steel.
Okay,
because
definitely not an uplifting film.
It has moments of levity,
but overall, like as a whole, if you score
it does not inspire. It does not inspire people the way that Field of Dreams does, or something like that.
Or Superman the movie,
or Superman
if
the
you
movie.
Want to keep it like sort of the same character.
And people who have listened to the show before know I like Man of Steel quite a bit. It's not a dig on the film. It just doesn't. It's not a rewatchable film in the way that tongue-in-cheek Ernest is. And I think movies that go too far in either direction, those are the ones that kind of fade from public view. So if you look at movies that we said like too dark, so if you look at say like Dark Knight Rises, Logan, eventually great for the industry, great for the banks, all that stuff, really well made, but they're not inherently rewatchable. And a film something like even say Deadpool doesn't take itself seriously at all, which is also great at the moment to pair off against something like Logan, which takes itself very seriously. That also gets by the wayside because that doesn't hit everybody. But tongue-in-cheek Ernest is almost a mass appeal. Whether you want the earnestness or you want the tongue-in-cheek or you want a bit of both, it has something for everybody.
Yes, I very much agree with that. I very strongly agree with that. If you're a more cynical person, there is something there for you. If you're a very optimistic person, there's something there for you. It kind of it satisfies a lot of people, whether you are more earnest or more tongue-in-cheek or whatever you are. That sort of film does satisfy both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. So I think that's why they're so successful at the box office, is because like no matter where you fall in that spectrum, there's something there for you.
That's correct.
So yeah. I don't think it's a tired formula. I think it's wise of Kevin Feige to keep looking at that, because from the time that movie, Superman the movie, came out, it has been sort of considered the quintessential superhero movie.
Yep. Now, see, the only problem I think with that is that quintessential things are generational. Oh, this is the quintessential superhero movie. Well, that might be because everybody in charge right now was a kid when it came out.
Yes.
And so there's a nostalgia factor at play
Yes.
there. And so I think we have to be careful when we say things are quintessential, because everything, it truly is a subjective point.
That's true. Yes, that's true. And maybe, I'm not sure whether what I'm about to say either. I think what I'm about to say might prove your point, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Star Wars A New Hope is the quintessential, like the most platonic ideal of the hero's journey, like as Joseph Campbell laid it out. You've got the young hero, you've got the princess, you've got the old wizard, you've got the rogue skeptic, and you've got the big bad of Darth Vader. You've got all those archetypes. Beer is good. All those archetypes in this one story that are it's Arthurian legend. It's like the very clear, this person is good, this person is bad. That is a very clear laid out archetype, or all those characters are archetypes that that clearly fall into those buckets. And I think Star Wars is sort of the clearest, most perfect platonic ideal of that type of story. Joseph Campbell agreed after George Lucas made it. He looked back and said, yes, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. So to me, that is sort of timeless, because it is that Arthurian, Homeric template that we've seen through the years, Shakespearean, going back years and years and years, decades, centuries, millennia. You have these types of characters keep popping up. So yes, I agree with you that there can be, like, there is a phenomenon where things are, oh, this is quintessential, whatever, but it's really just a very timely, like, yeah, that's very it's very in right now, and it has been for the last 30 years, but like, it'll pass. Everyone is really hopped up on it right now, but it'll pass. But then there are certain things that do last, or if they go away temporarily, they come back around.
So what do you think the amount of time is for something to become quintessential then?
That's hard to say. I mean, I don't know that there is a specific number. Like, well, if it's been around 50 years, then it's quintessential. I don't know what that number is. It's not really about the amount of time. It's more about how closely does it adhere to what people resonate with.
I think, but people resonate with different things at different times. So, say like something very dark and moody hit America or the world strongly after 9/11. It's something that we were like, yes, this is how we feel. Good on you for representing that. Now, or we don't feel exactly that same way anymore.
Sure, no.
It's not going. So that version of dark and broody is not going to resonate the same way anymore. We remember how it resonated, but it's not the same. So I think that for something to end up being quintessential, it has to move beyond 2 generations.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So that's like 40, 50 years.
Yeah. It has to because it can't be us. Like if it comes out in 2018, it can't be us that say it's quintessential. It has to be 2 generations later that are still talking about it going, this is quintessential. Yeah, at least. So like say Star Wars has made that. The generation under us are Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
They're still there. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, I do. And I agree with that, but I think my feeling is that the things that are truly quintessential, like this is the truest telling of this story, those things, yes, they last at least 40, 50 years, but you can sometimes tell when something is going. I feel like people knew Star Wars was going to fit that mold 20 years ago.
Oh, sure. Okay. So, all right. So I'm just thinking, like, let's say Superman the movie is the quintessential template for a superhero film. But does that mean that everybody has to still have seen it?
Well, no.
So it doesn't have to be popular continue to be popular to be quintessential.
No, I'm not talking about its popularity. I'm talking about how much does it adhere to the in this case the hero's journey. How closely does it perfectly express the idea of the hero's journey?
Okay, I was kind of combining them in my brain.
Yeah, popularity I think is a different thing. It's more about like how good of a version of the story is it.
Sure.
To me, Star Wars is like maybe the most perfect version in modern pop culture, and Superman the movie is the most perfect superhero version of that.
And you being of a person that likes Superman the movie quite a bit, but it's not my favorite movie, and not even my favorite superhero movie. Right. But you can recognize its use of a timeless formula.
Yes.
Better than some other people who have used that same formula.
Yep.
Well, this has been wonderful, Frank. I think so. Would you have anything to wrap up with? Tell me.
Baba Booey?
Okay, great. Tell me.
Baba Booey.
Probably. Baba Boy?
Baba Booey.
Baba Booey. I don't know what that means.
Wow. There is a big cultural divide between us.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. It's a Howard Stern thing. I'm not even a Howard Stern fan. It's just a thing that people say.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. We ended on Howard Stern.
No, I would, and, well, I feel like I've said what I have to say, honestly. It's not Superman the movie is not my favorite superhero film, but I recognize its significance and its importance in the, like, pantheon of superhero films. To me, the fact that Kevin Feige and crew have looked at that movie as the template and they've had so much success 19 films in says something. It says something.
Do you think that superhero movies will have to follow it forever to be successful?
No, I don't, because I don't think Logan follows it. I don't think Deadpool follows it, and I think that they were obviously very successful for what they were for R-rated films, but not every film has to. But I do think, let's put it this way, not all successful films follow that template, but many films that follow the template are successful.
That's a good point.
Right?
Good. I'm glad that we ended with SATs instead of Howard Stern.
There you go.
Good. All right. Well, you can find us on beerwithgeeks.com and Facebook and Gmail and Twitter. You can rate and review us on iTunes and find us in all other places that podcasts can be found, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Overcast and the Google Play Store. You can also, of course, check out all other Thought Bubble Audio shows at thoughtbubbleaudio.com. And you can check out Frank in Atlanta coming up soon, if you'd like to plug that for a second.
Dark Expo Live with Brian Austin Green, with Ian Ziering, with Derek Russell, with everyone else who's from the folks from 90210, apparently, because that's who I hang out with. And
cool.
We're going to be doing a live show for charity, and it's going to be great. And we would love to see you there September 1st in Atlanta.
Very cool. All right. Well, then that means until next time, we didn't really have to cheers because it's a can.
Cans. Let's do a special Mike's in cans cheers. Ready?
Right. 1,
2,
3. Cheers.